Daring in the Desert, Chapter 20. It was December 1901, and the two friends, Lilius and Blanche, were back in Tolga. At first, things seemed to be going well. They settled into a local house, and people came to see them and to talk. Not only that, strangers traveling through Tolga heard about Jesus and then went on their journeys, still talking about him. "They are missionaries without even knowing it," Blanche said. "When they meet strangers on the road and stop to talk to them, they'll tell them the stories of Jesus that they heard from us." "We'll pray that will happen," agreed Lilius. And they did. Just as things were going smoothly, the women heard some bad news. A government official had been told about their mission work and was coming to see what they were doing. He came. He was very polite. And then he told them once again to stop trying to make people Christians. Of course, nobody can make someone a Christian except God alone, but the government official didn't understand that. Blanche and Lilius felt sad. "Things were going so well," said Blanche. "This is just heartbreaking." "Yes, but God doesn't make mistakes," Lilius pointed out. "He must want us somewhere else." That happened in 1902, and for the next while, things just became harder and harder. They had to be so very careful not to upset the officials and not to break the law. By the next year, the children's groups they ran in Algiers had gone down from 100 to only a handful of children. Some people even went to court and told lies about the missionaries to get them into trouble. There seemed to be no end to the hard things they had to face. When Lilius went back to England in the summer of 1903, it seemed as if the work in Algeria was slowing to a stop. But it was while she was away from her beloved Arab people that a little chink of light sent from God began to shine through the darkness. Although people can no longer come to Rue de Croissant as often, and we can't go to them, they can still read, she thought. Then, lying back on her pillow, for she was quite ill that summer, she remembered how many girls and women had been taught to read while they'd been doing embroidery in their home. "I wonder," as she lay there, her heart weak and her energy very low, Lilius's mind had time to think through a new idea. She talked it over with a friend. "In the Bible, we read that Jesus taught people by telling stories that they could easily understand." "You mean parables like the Good Samaritan and the lost sheep?" her friend asked. "Yes, exactly," Lilius agreed. "I've been wondering if we could write stories set in an Algerian background that would teach people about Jesus. They could be written in the beautiful Arabic script, not the educated Arabic, but the language that the people speak in their own homes." Her friend nodded. "And you could illustrate them with paintings of Algerian scenes and people." Lilius's face shone. The idea was coming together very quickly now that it has been spoken aloud. "We could do one story a month, and then people would begin to look forward to them, and maybe even collect them. And pass them around to their friends," suggested her companion. So it was that during her months at home, when Lilius's heart was weak and her health poor, the missionary's brain, pencil, and paintbrush were busy writing stories, drawing, and painting illustrations to go along with them. On her return to Algeria, plans were made to begin this new work. Before long, the booklets, beautifully written, copied carefully, and bound together with ribbon, were being handed out to people who would not hear about Jesus any other way. Arabic writing, unlike English, is very curvy and artistic. The mix of graceful Arabic writing and Lilius's lovely paintings was really quite beautiful. "The people love beauty," Helen said as she held one of the stories called "The Debt of Ali Ben Omar" in her hands. "They look so different from British books," Lilius commented. "Much softer somehow." "I think that's because we've used the traditional cream paper. Its rough texture makes your watercolor paintings look as if they are on canvas." Lilius looked at the painting she was working on. It was of an Arab woman and child. For a few minutes, she allowed herself to think back over the years to John Ruskin, trying to persuade her to become a full-time artist, to be the principal of a school of art for women in London. Would I have been happier doing that rather than going through all the troubles in the Algerian government? She asked herself. No. She knew that she was where God wanted her to be, and that was the happiest place to be. Indeed, she was at her happiest, telling people about Jesus. Then she smiled. Perhaps, she thought, I'm at my happiest on the back of a camel in the remotest parts of the Algerian desert. What Lilius and Helen could never have imagined was that over the years to come, many of these parable books would be translated into other languages and used in different countries. God doesn't waste anything. Although Lilius Trotter was able to paint and write, she really wasn't well at all. You need a very long rest, her doctor said. 6 months at least. Helen, Blanche, and the others were dismayed. She'll never rest for anything like that length of time, they decided. But Lilius's body was agreeing with her doctor. She knew she was completely exhausted. For months, the missionary spent most of her time in her little room in Rue de Croissant with some of her Arab friends looking after her as well as the other missionaries. Being in her room didn't dull her interest in what was going on, however. We are just getting ready to go, Paul and Michael said when they visited Lilius in her room before leaving her for Tolga. I'll be with you in prayer, she told them. And then she tapped a large folded sheet of paper that was lying on her bed. And I'll be following your every step on this. What is it? Michael asked. Lilius opened up the sheet and spread it over the bed. It's a map I drew of Tolga and the villages round about it. I'll be thinking about you as you go on to this home and to that one, she said, pointing to the houses where people she remembered lived. And you'll need this with you so you can take note of your door-to-door visiting. Taking a second sheet from underneath the first one, Lilius gave the two men a copy of her map to use on their travels. Because Lilius wrote a journal, we know that she did follow the work that Paul and Michael did because she wrote down what she was thinking of and who she was praying for.